Well, hello. It's another episode of Spencer Uncensored. This is actually episode 60. Pretty wild. Means we've been doing this over a year now. So I'm sure some others are going to drop in here. And as you can tell, this is not the normal environment that I do these calls in. All right. Where am I? Well, I'm actually in a little town in it's in the middle of Idaho. Right, so you got the big fat bottom, and then it starts going up into what they call the panhandle. I'm not all the way at the top, but I'm not all the way at the bottom. I am in a small town called Troy, Idaho. What would I be doing in Troy, Idaho? Well, friends, I don't want to get real, this is uncensored, so I can share whatever I want. But I'm actually visiting my father. My father... my mom and dad got a divorce when I was young. I was about 7. And I've actually never been here. Well, the truth is that I was 3 years old when I last visited Spokane, Washington, which is about 2 hours from here. I'm going to go on Saturday. I'm going to go visit sites and visit graveyards and visit where my dad was from and all that kind of stuff. I never got that when I was younger. And I'm now 47 years old, 40 years after divorce. I'm up here checking things out and getting to know my dad a little bit better, which is, for some of you, that's like not that big of a deal. And some of you maybe never even met your father. In my case, I knew my dad. He's always been faithful about communicating. But in my case, I'd never actually been up here. And so I made it a point, even though it wasn't convenient, wasn't the best of the timing, I made it a point to make sure that I came and visited my father. He's 74 years old. He'll be 75 in December. And if you look at both of my parents, my mother and my father, neither one of them are extremely wealthy. And sometimes I think it's helpful for you guys to know that, because you look at kind of the lifestyle we've been living and where we're doing and what we're doing and how I take performers and get them at an even higher level. And, I rub elbows with some of the wealthiest people around. And how did you go from obscurity, Spencer? And I'll be honest with you, it's not DNA, because DNA would tell me I'll be living on a double wide somewhere, probably in South Carolina. And not that that's necessarily a terrible situation to be in, but it's not the level that I thought is good enough. And so I'm out here getting to know my dad a little bit better, a little bit more in depth, which in turn teaches me a few things. I also enjoy just traveling and meeting new people in new areas. It's kind of cool because, right now you can see the snow is melting. Right now it's 37 degrees. And this Florida boy, 37 is not terrible in Jacksonville from where I'm from. But tonight it'll be in the teens. Some of this snow is going to turn into ice, which is not going to be fun because it's been melting most of the day. I am, make sure if you guys have any comments. I see you guys jumping in. But anyway, so I like to do some of this travel because it's funny. Anywhere you go, there's people and they got their own cultures and they don't know, people around here is like Jacksonville, Florida. Oh, that's way on the other side of the country. Yeah, it is. And there's a whole community and there's a whole ecosystem there, right? There's people everywhere. This past week, my mind got expanded because I added 300,000+ email addresses to my database to increase the level of reach that I'm having. And that's just in the state of Florida. You're like, what? Yeah. Guys, when your brain is locked in on like 300 or 400 people and you're like trying to squeeze everything out of that 300, but then you got 300,000. Listen, somebody wants to be a knucklehead, you let them go. It was a testament to the fact that we need to keep lead generating and finding business and growing business and adding to our database, if you will. But in any event, right? The world is such a bigger place than what we think it is. It's so much more, and there's so much more going on, and there's other people just like you. And there's some people not like you. Super cool. But today, on Spencer Uncensored, this is episode 60, I want to share a little thought that I have been repeating to a lot of people recently. This is kind of how it goes for me. But I've done the study of the word mediocre. Now, the reason why mediocre came up in mediocrity is because I've been looking for the appropriate words to share when we talk about the difference between, in the book, Unshakeable Drive. We're talking about going from that mid-range, mid-level average to a high performance or a high level, right? And so we've been working on finding words to make the distinction between those two. And really that average level is mediocre. And so I, looked up like a normal preacher would do. I looked up the word mediocre, and from an etymology perspective, meaning, the study of the word, it actually means medi and ochre. Those two words put together, it means middle of the mountain. And if you think about middle of the mountain conversation around being mediocre, you're halfway there. You decided to take on a mission to go do something big with your life. You decided to launch a real estate business. You decided to go, have a phenomenal marriage. You decided to have yourself a great health. You decided to do something and climb that peak, but you got halfway there and then you looked around and said, well, this is kind of nice. I mean, average is not terrible. You look at it, but then again, is it great? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm going to bet you that the average household income is not that phenomenal. But they're surviving. They got a better view than when they were down in the bottom. I don't know if that's you, but I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves showing up might be half the battle. You've heard that before. Showing up is half the battle. At least you showed up there, Spencer. That's half the battle. Man, shut up. Because half the battle is not going to win the battle. If you're crawling out from a hole, if you're crawling out from a bottom perspective where you have absolutely no production and life is just absolutely horrible, and you are in fact working on surviving, getting to the middle of the mountain might be the appropriate thing. Might be a huge piece of the pie, and you can give yourself a big pat on the back for that. However, getting comfortable with mediocrity is not going to give you the mountaintop experience. It's not going to give you that high level euphoria when you can see long range and see the vision that you actually had for your life. So if you're hearing this right now and you get this message, you to take yourself and visualize what it's like at the top of the mountain first. And get fully associated to that. Emotionally, mentally, physically. That's why we set anchor goals. We're getting ready to launch this challenge here in a couple of weeks, right? It's a 7-day Unshakeable planning challenge. The very first thing we do is we help you become massively emotionally connected to the outcome. Because when things get hard or when things get easy, you're not going to settle where you are. You're going to keep climbing that mountain because you want to win. You know what it looks like up there, and you know what it feels like to be on top of that mountain. And when you feel like you're dragging ass and you can't get anywhere, having a compelling future is one of the best ways to move yourself forward. Having what we call potent goals, not impotent goals. It will juice you. And many of you have heard me say this before. If it doesn't juice you, it will not move you. Oh man. This may sound like an inspirational conversation, but I've had so many conversations very recently where people are just kind of like, they're either getting fizzled out and they're okay with some of the business they're at and they're settling into some mediocrity. I'm telling you, the best way to get to the mountaintop, the first thing you have to do is get super attached to that outcome emotionally. If it doesn't juice you, it won't move you. The second step, by the way, that we do in the challenge, we're going to be doing this in the challenge. I'm looking to get as many people as possible. It'd be awesome if we had 2,000 or 3,000 in there, because you guys could start really feeding off of each other. But I'd be totally satisfied if it was 20 to 30. Doesn't matter to me. I'm looking to make an impact. The second step is build a price tag. People don't understand the price tag. Without the price tag, anything will take you off track. What do you do when you hear about some other agent that's like, hey, I did this cool thing and I've got, 50,000 new leads coming in, or, hey, I just converted this deal, these 3 deals, and they just, right? What do you do when you hear this kind of stuff? I got an agent right now that told me they got 32 transactions on one shot because they worked the hell out of it, some investors and an investor that was selling his portfolio. 32 transactions. And they're going to make somewhere around 2 to 3% somewhere in there per deal. Guys, this is big money. And this is a guy in his first year. And you hear things like that and you're like, well, maybe I should do something similar. Should you? How do you know? Well, if you don't have a price tag for your year, anything will take you off track. I'm thinking of an agent right now. You get sucked into all kind of wholesale conversations because they have not been able to get their mind focused long enough on the priority of one particular activity that they have identified for themselves. But they'll go chase all this other stuff. How do you keep yourself between the lines? How do you keep your business between the lines? You do it when you have a price tag. And then you take that price tag, you transfer it to a rap sheet and a process. And when you get into that process, it's a whole lot easier to say no to that $25,000 gift that's in front of you because you know the $250,000 value that you carry inside. One of my coaches years ago, when I was making the move from South Carolina to Florida, I had made some sort of comment about, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get going again in a whole other city, somewhere new, and so on. And my coach said to me, Spencer, does the market dictate your success or do you determine your success? Well, that's a trick question. Of course, it's me. It's not the market where you're at. It's what you choose to do. I had to make a decision about what my value was in that moment versus what I thought the market would give me. I trust this was just a moment where you think about this for a second and take yourself from middle of the mountain to the top of the mountain. And I got news for you. Just like Tony Robbins says, at every level, there's always another mountain. That's why we do these anchor goals that are 3 and 5 years out, because once you get to the top of that mountain, you're going to be looking for another mountain peak. It never ends. By the way, side note, you can't see them here. You don't see them here, but I'm in an area that we were driving around and got corrected, and I was told, no, these are not mountains. These are just hills. I looked at that, I was like, well, they're mighty big hills. I'm just going to say that to you. Because up northern Idaho, it gets like really big mountains and stuff goes on. But where I'm at right now, apparently they're really large hills, which are kind of at the bottom of these mountains. So anyway, been great hanging out with you guys. It's only 3:15 on my side of the country right now. So all of you that are West Coasters, I'm on your time zone until this weekend. So anyway, this has been another episode of Spencer Uncensored. I trust this was useful, or at least as a wake-up call to remind you, don't settle. Keep moving forward.